order the meeting of the North Canton Planning Commission. It is May 3rd, 2023, and it is 7:01 p.m. The first thing on the agenda tonight is our roll call. Randy, if you would.
Mr. Dalpace?
Here.
Mr. Mahausen?
Present.
Mr. Sarah?
Present.
Mr. Volas?
Here.
Mr. LePage?
Okay, next, I would like to make an adjustment to the agenda, so I'd like to make a motion to move item 6A, the general app development review application. I'd like to move that up to 5 would be 5A, and then the other public hearing items would move down underneath it. That way the applicant can be back to back for the adjudication and the public hearing portion. So I would make a motion to adjust the agenda from 6A up to 5A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item, our minutes for consideration. Submit the March 1st, 2023 meeting minutes for approval. If no one has any comments or corrections, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The next item on the agenda here is an adjudication hearing. Just for anyone in the audience, during adjudication hearings, we do ask when you stand up to speak that you get sworn in. So you state your name and address before you speak on the subject. The first part of the adjudication hearing here is the application number 23NCPC-0001, 500 Apple Grove Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio, 44720. This is a conditional use to permit a new vehicle repair facility. So if there is an applicant in the crowd that would like to speak or a representative, I'd ask it this time you can come to the podium and
Now
you can present right now. We'd like a short overview of the project, please.
Need to state your name.
My name is Eric Turk, ERICTURK. Address is 14577 Moraine Avenue, that's Cleveland, Ohio, 4411. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. Appreciate that. To be part of the opportunity to be part of the city. My name is Eric Turk. I'm the CEO and president of the Conrad Companies. We operate many brands in the state of Ohio only, family-owned business. We're here today seeking approval for a Conrad Tire Service Center, auto service center facility, 500 Apple Grove. Conrad Companies, we've been around since 1969, so this is our 54th year in business. We are family-owned, family-oriented business, very much focused on our employees and servicing the communities we're in. We are very focused on being responsible corporate citizens and protecting our brand. So what I kind of mean by that is when we develop the site, we're really looking to make sure we have our neighbors in mind based on where we put the bays and the offerings of sorts. We also try to work with the neighbors when possible. The site is pretty straightforward. It's a facility, 6 bays on the east side here, three on the left. And you see the parking, and we work to make sure we had the right type of landscaping. So I think that's really the gist of it. Be happy to answer questions later, and I have more info if needed too.
Okay. Members of the commission, or actually, let's turn it over to the city first. Martin, are you taking the lead on this?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Staff has met with the applicant as the pre-application meeting. We have reviewed the project plans. The project is located in the Main Street North Gateway. The proposed use is a conditional use, hence our agenda for you tonight. Each of the departments within the city have reviewed this. I think most notably in this case would be the city engineer. This, as you recall, this project was up for consideration a couple years ago for the Blue Falls Car Wash. There was a traffic study brought forward with that warranted a turn lane. As I recall, there was some challenges acquiring the land that
Yes.
required that turn lane. It was a significant amount of land required, given the speed of Apple Grove and the length and the taper and the DOT standards that required that turn lane. This project did not warrant the turn lane. So based on, historical information, particularly with that, aforementioned, traffic study and, the particular use of the auto repair, it's a much less, and, the intensity is not there of the car wash. It's, significantly less. So, with that, staff does find this is consistent with the ordinance and is recommending an approval for the project.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
My pleasure.
Commission members, any questions, comments?
So just a real quick question for the city. That turn lane there is no turn lane out in front of this facility.
That's correct.
So this is west of Main.
That's correct.
So okay.
Yeah, and so to further on that, the city engineer did find that full access was permissible in this case. So it is not a restricted turn. For example, they can turn left out of here based on the traffic information.
So it's just a 2-lane, an entrance out and an entrance in.
In the same approach, it's one approach on the property
In
and
one
with,
approach.
right.
Is there a concern of the neighboring residence driveway that is on the property, the drive itself?
We did talk about that, and as I recall, and I'm gonna look to the applicant to remind me some of the specifics, but as I recall, we had some landscape buffering distance from the residence, as well as, the tools, the latest tool technology was quieter than the older tools. And then there were some examples. I don't wanna mess up the details. If you
Sure, I
could
can
share
add some
those
color
with
to
us, please.
both the questions and comments, related to the traffic, obviously, we had the car wash approved on the site, and the adding the left lane, while we were willing to pay for it, we actually had to take land from 7 private owners, and the amount of variances in that, it was just probably insurmountable at that time. So that's where we moved. We've always wanted to have the Conrads that were here, so that's where we kind of pivoted. In regards to the volume, car wash is gonna see 60, 100 cars a day. Busy days more than that. We average about 21 cars per day out of our 37 tire and auto service centers. On the higher side, you see like 35. Okay, so I'm hoping it's on the higher side. So I hope that answers that a little bit. In regards to the driveway, it was a surprise for us when we first saw the survey. In conversations with the city, left the meeting going a little unsure if I should contact the neighbor or not, but we did. So I proactively sent a letter to the resident, right here, to the west here. And we spoke with them, and what we've come to an agreement on, we're actually gonna write an easement for them on that drive piece there. I have one little issue I need to work through with them, related to maybe future construction of something on their lot. But we've been working back and forth. Actually, I brought a copy of these. So if that needs to be part of the approval, that's okay. In regards to the buffering, I showed them the plan here. And what they would like us to do is add like 5 to 6 foot arborvitaes of some sort from the north, I guess that would be the north east corner of the garage up to the northeast corner of the home. So kind of where there's those 5, I guess those would be the Chinese junipers. I would suggest, or working with the neighbor, we remove those and put just a line of, taller. They felt that was buffering related to.
Okay.
Well, that was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments from commission members?
I want to confirm something. The curb cut and access at the adjacent property, which is a restaurant, I think resembles this one, right? If I'm not mistaken. So my point is that there's no right in, right out at the restaurant. It's the same as what's being proposed here, and they share a property. Correct? Is that's stormwater retention in the south part of the property? That's where all the runoff is gonna go. The runoff, the stormwater detention at the south end of the site. So is it, everything's gonna drain to the south, or is it gonna drain to the north on the road? How do you guys, what's the grading plan?
Pass that.
That was, yeah, that's what that is.
Architect, DSC Architects, 401. Yes, the basement at the south is where surface water will be directed. From there, it'll then head back north to go.
Okay.
That's where it'll be detained, that's where the water quality will be provided back there. Those details aren't designed yet. But that's what food.
So the plan is all the runoff will go to the stormwater detention, and it'll go back into the storm sewer at the street.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from commission members?
One other question. I know we don't know what the plan, site plan doesn't show the adjacent properties to the north, right? So it's probably too early to tell what curb cuts are gonna look like there.
I think there's. Do you mean with the Meyer development
Yeah.
or, I don't know.
Is it gonna be, I mean, my guess is it's not gonna line up with everything. I think that's kind of the assumption I'm making. Not that it matters, it's just, I just want to get a confirmation.
Yeah, so this project sits across the street from 501 Apple Grove. This would not conflict with the Meyer development. And the driveways for the 501, they're slightly stacked.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or comments from commission members, I would entertain a motion. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Public comment?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Thank you, sorry.
My name is David Pleasant, and I reside at 8100 Pheasant Avenue. And I'm actually here representing my mother, Alberta Davis, who lives at 608 Apple Grove, right next door to where Conrad is going to be. And I have to say, they did a great job. They reached out to us, they were communicating very well. They are big neighbors. The only thing I wanted to reach out to you guys is that when Walters went in there was not a lot of communication, and there was no preparation. Now the city has set up ordinances for controlling the water, the runoff, and all that. I'm glad to see it. I just asked that my mother has lived there for over 50 years. She raised 4 boys in that house. All she wants to do is die in peace in her house there, and with as little disturbance as possible. So we're asking for 3 things that they're taking care of. And that is the sound, the light, and we've already addressed the water. So just asking to please stay on top of this. You know, flooding is a problem in that area. So we just want to stay on top. That's all. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you for
this.
Thank you, and I'll give you my card.
Thank you.
There is issues in the future.
So it's your mother's drive that
Yes, it is.
property
Yeah, that drive has been there as long as the house has been there. It's just always been on the neighbor's property.
And you support that if they would go with a written easement for you to keep
Yes.
that drive in its location?
Yes, that's what I was, the process reached out here to let you know that we're supporting.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, no, you're
This is
right.
for Mr. Serto. Has there been a photometric study done here or anything?
Yeah, it was submitted with this packet,
Okay.
and at the property line, we're showing 0 foot candles.
Yeah.
The property line, what, Jeff, I'm sorry.
On the property line, we're showing 0 foot candles.
So all the light,
All the lights.
all lighting's on the built.
No, it's pole lighting
Oh, yeah.
with cutoff shield, so everything is kept on our property, nothing.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak at this time? Any more follow-up questions? I did notice the lighting, so thank you for submitting that and showing the full cutoff along the property line there. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion.
So I would like to place a motion to approve with 2 conditions: that the agreement, the easement agreement is drafted between neighbor for the drive. And also the second would be that adequate, so let's say, not necessarily arborvitae, but
Landscaping and buffer.
landscaping buffer is provided with the same resident to 2 parties.
Okay, we have a motion.
Can I make an amendment to the amendment? My only thing would be is that that agreement is recorded as well. So the public knows.
Would you like to amend your motion?
I accept that.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion with an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Randa, if you could do a roll call, please.
Mr. Mahousen,
Yes.
Mr. Volas.
Yes.
Mr. Dalpais,
Yes.
Mr. Sarah.
Yes.
Okay. The next item on the our revised agenda here will be the general development plan for this is application number 23 NCPC-0001 at 500 Apple Grove Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio. This is the general development review for a new vehicle repair facility. So I think we've already taken a look at the site plan here. I don't think probably the applicant has any more to present, but commission members, I didn't know if you had any other questions outside of the conditional use that was just approved. This is general development review, so anything regarding the general development plan that you would like to comment or even some clarification on.
Can we just have the applicant go through each page and just describe what's there? Sure. Just for the record first.
Okay, drawing SP1 is site plan for the project. General view from above. It shows the building itself, the parking around it, required setbacks, showing that we're complying with the city ordinance. There's 46 parking spaces provided, building size of 6,380 square feet. The next sheet would be the landscape plan. I don't know if this is the right order for you, but I'll follow you. Yeah, go to the second sheet, we'll see. All right, so that's the floor plan. That shows the layout of the building inside. And in general, there's a showroom for the public When they come in and drop their car off, meet with somebody in that area, they can wait in that area. There's office and toilet facilities in the front there. And then behind are the service bays. As pointed out earlier, there are 6 on the west side, 3 on the east side, and there's also a delivery door. Yeah, a delivery door on the east side as well. Okay, the next sheet, that's the building elevations. So it'll be a masonry structure. It's the same materials used on all Conrad stores. There'll be a red masonry brick, glass storefront system across the front. You go to the sides to the bays. The service doors are glass, aluminum framed glass overhead doors. The service door will not be a glass door. It will be just a standard steel painted door. There's a pyramid-shaped metal roof feature, kind of signatory Conrad stores. There'll be some building signage. We're not actually applying for that tonight, so the sign company will come back and do that. Okay, next sheet. Landscape plan. So this shows the layout of the landscaping done by a landscape contractor. Prepared this, and so it gives you all the detail on the size, the botanical name of the landscaping, the common name of the landscaping, and on the plan it shows. And next sheet is the photometric lighting plan, and that's what shows 6 pole lights, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, and 2 on the east and west sides. And as I said, they're fixtures on poles with cutoff shields that maintain all our light on our property. And then it just gives a general lighting level for all the surface of the property. The pole detail is there, and then there's some fixture schedule describing the specifications.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Martin, is there anything the city would like to add to the development review part, or?
No, I think we pretty well covered it. The project is, we do find it is in compliance with the zoning code and hereby, recommend approval on that as well.
Okay. Any questions, commission members?
Yeah, so the fire department's reviewed and they're okay?
That's correct, yes. At the pre-application time, we send the application and all the documents submitted for review, comment. So each, including the fire department, city engineers, we talked about for the conditional use permit, has reviewed the project.
So the storage unit outside beside the trash enclosure is where you're going to store used tires, and the city's okay with that.
So that's secure, so people can't get to it. It's roofed, locked, and in our meeting, the fire department actually preferred it away from the building, opposed to adjacent to the building, so we have it back. Yes, it's the same materials as the building. So
My comment is more directed toward the city with future and further development, commercial development along Apple Grove. I believe this is going to become an issue with making left turns into a facility like this, cutting cross traffic, that a dedicated turning lane should be considered at some point. It has nothing to do with this at this time.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commission members? Anyone from the public like to speak on this issue? Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion.
A motion to approve, as submitted.
We have a motion. I'll second the motion. Randa, if you could do roll call, please.
Mr. Volas,
Yes.
Mr. Dowpase,
Yes?
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is public hearing for an ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 1153, off-street parking of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton. So at this time, Martin, is this your,
That's me.
Martin will be presenting from the city regarding this issue.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, yeah, as you mentioned, this is an overhaul of 1153 on the parking standards. This is prompted by the general plan to make the zoning amendments. And as we've talked about in other meetings, it's healthy to continually update the zoning code, particularly as markets change. And, as you know, we've changed the zoning in numerous areas of the city, particularly and most notably the Main Street district, whereby some of these requirements are already incorporated into the Main Street district zoning. For example, the smaller parking stall sizes. But particularly what this, in probably the most functional part of this, is removing the requirement for minimum number of parking stalls. So the quantity is and will no longer be regulated as part of this for everything except residential uses as well as hotel motels. Now those will remain as a required minimum number of parking stalls, particularly for the residential. There is an ordinance that prohibits overnight parking. We want to ensure that the residential properties are accommodated with those minimum parking, and we don't set them up to violate a different part of the ordinance. Now that's not necessarily the zoning code, but that's where the thought behind that was. The other part of that with the businesses, requiring a minimum number of parking. The businesses in most cases are represented by an architect. They are generally not going to undersize their parking. They know best what the market is and what they need for parking to accommodate their customers. Of course, on the residential side, that's not generally the case. So that's kind of the contrast there. Let's see, I think that pretty well covers it, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. I might add the one and point out probably the obvious there is the city is pretty well landlocked. So we do need more options to further promote development and give commercial properties a little more flexibility to either expand or perhaps consider a different use on the property that still fits within the zoning, but they won't be limited or, tied up to, the parking requirement is oversized. As you see, you go through a number of the commercial properties throughout the city, and you do see a lot of unused parking. This will help mitigate that. And with that, I'll rest and here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Any questions from commission members? Yet.
Well, please clarify that I'm reading this thing right. So the first part is a draft of what you want us to vote and approve. Is that correct?
I believe so. Let me double
Yeah,
check.
the first, yeah, the, the
Yeah.
chapter 1153, that is in there. This is the draft copy of it, and then behind it was the edited copy, so it has the markups on it.
Exactly.
It's the same, it's from the old version, yeah.
Okay.
From the existing version, this, the one with the red markups, they are the same version.
But it shows what's being stripped.
Yeah, exactly. The second copy shows what's stripped, yeah, or edited, correct.
I just wanna make sure I reviewed that correctly.
Yeah.
It was just a little confusing when I first saw it.
Right. If you guys wanna look for a minute, I'll make it just a couple comments. One thing I did bring up to Martin prior to the meeting, was I saw that, hotel and motel was struck from the table for the recommended. And that was struck from the table because it has been moved to 1153.02, which it is required. So there, that is covered, that any short-term occupancy, regardless of district, must have, a parking space for those units, and et cetera, that it's the same that it was before. But for the rest of the uses, this is just a recommended amount of parking. I think this is very progressive. I know many projects, developers or someone wants to do some work on their property, new building, whatever it may be. And, often it's overparked, or, well, not overparked, but over designed for parking, especially when it comes to retail space. So I think this is very progressive and does help mitigate some of those issues that it's almost as if some businesses were, they're required to spend more money than they need to on parking, which then they actually could use that for the building of their business. So I do appreciate that thought process. Just trying to think if there's anything else. The main thing was the hotel motel that I saw, but I'm glad to see that that is required. And in general, our vote on this tonight is a recommendation to council. I mean, this will go to council no matter what we vote on it. So it is, just a recommendation or not recommendation, or a recommendation with edits, whatever it may be. But they will have their say on it after what we recommend with this vote. Just a reminder in that regard. Does anyone, Mr. Sarah?
Yeah, so the one section, 1153.05, where it said allows for shared parking. So we're striking that out. Is that correct?
I believe
That got
that was
moved.
it was moved.
It's
Yeah.
just moved.
Yes.
Right.
Because I know we have shared parking for businesses.
Yep.
That's still permitted.
It has just been moved forward to 1153.03 subsection C on page, what would be 80 if you look at the bottom page number. It's right at the top of the page. Shared parking shall be permitted if any of the following conditions are met. Mixed-use project where different uses have varying peak parking demands and the uses can be adequately accommodated. And then the parking space proposed use can be accommodated on adjacent or nearby site, and a binding agreement has been made between property owners. So I believe that's all the same text that was in before. It's just been.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't find it.
Yeah. I think is that all the same text, Martin? I believe it is, word for word. It's just been moved.
I'm wanting to say we actually loosened up on the language to make
Okay.
it a little easier to do the shared parking. Shared parking is a fairly common interest amongst commercial properties, particularly where, they may have ebbs and flows in their traffic, and it may be inverse of their neighbor. So one neighbor may need the additional parking in the evening while the other neighbor needs the additional parking during the daytime.
Yeah, it's just been slightly edited. I got it here side by side.
Yeah, it substantially it is the same though.
Yes.
But we were trying to loosen up the requirements just a bit to make it a bit more usable for more properties.
Yeah. I would just say on that one, that is a big one that I think is very positive as well. There's retail plazas that have, if they have multiple restaurants in the plaza and multiple other uses, I mean, the other uses are done at 5 p.m, and then that's when the restaurants pick up. So instead of double parking everything. Any other comments from commission members? Mr. Mahausen, look like you have something.
Nothing.
No? Okay. Mr. Sarah, good. Mr. Volas? Okay. At this time, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this issue? Full house tonight. Okay, well, if there's no more questions from commission members, I would entertain a motion on this item.
I would like the motion to recommend repealing and replacing chapter 1153 off-street parking of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second it?
We have a second. Randa, if you could roll call, please.
Mr. Daples?
Yes.
Mr. Volas?
Yes.
Mr. Mahausen?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda, this is an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 1107 subdivision regulations of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton. Martin, would you like to give a overview on this?
Yes,
item?
sir. Thank you. Here again, as mentioned previously, the city is landlocked, and we're also substantially built out. So there's very few instances where this may come into play, but it was important to do. There's a number of things that this addresses. Primarily, this was to address the procedures that have been longstanding and in place. So much of this is incorporating procedures and codify procedures that, again, have been in place for quite some time. Most notably on there is the bond requirement. This does codify the bond requirement that has been in place for subdivisions, particularly on that. And this does clarify the final plat with the preliminary plat as well. Puts more of an emphasis on that final plat, as again, that's how we've always practiced that. The final plat was had more of the emphasis on it upon completion of the project. This again codifies that part of it. There are a couple items in here that are new as part of this. One is the inspection requirements for the developments. This further clarifies that the inspections are in fact required, and the developer would be responsible for reimbursing the city for those inspections. That would be for the grading, the drainage, those types of things that historically have always been, well, we don't know who really is responsible for these inspections because they're not in the ordinance. Typically Stark Soil and Water will play a part in that. That part of it is addressed, and they've always been a good partner in that. This clarifies some of the other inspection points in the developments on there. I will note real quick while I'm thinking about it, is this draft was sent to the 3 local developers and there were no comments received. So we generally assume no news is good news on that. So the council clerk did send this out. Let's see, the other, again, trying to get some of these costs so they're not borne by the city. For example, the open space requirement, typically those have been become city property. Well, then that puts a burden on the city to maintain those, to mow those. There's a substantial cost. This changes that, puts the burden back on the development and not the city. I think that pretty well covers the highlights on that. Again, I'm happy to answer questions that may come up.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
My pleasure.
Any questions? Mr. Sarah?
So I just want to clarify, obviously, there's a note on here about construction of new private streets. That's referring to new private streets. If there's an existing private street that's being shared by houses, then that's grandfathered in.
Correct, yeah, so chapter 1159 is the non-conforming zoning part of this, so an existing private street would bear the benefits of chapter 1159, essentially saying they can maintain that and keep it there in good repair, of course. Now, they wouldn't be able to expand that private street based on this, but, you know, the whole thing is if that was the only thing that made sense, that they expand a private street for whatever reason, there's always the variance process that, you know, if it's a one-off. So often these codes are a broad brush stroke, and the variance process is the avenue to fine tune those where it makes sense.
So I know one place in the city that there is 7 houses that shares a private street, and they maintain the private street. But I know they would like the city to take ownership of it. And if they did, then would this not conform anymore? Because it's now not, you know, it's being maintained by the city and not by the house, the lots that are on that private street.
Yeah, so that can be complicated depending on the history, and it probably best addressed by the city engineer, but I can share some experience with private streets that were built in after the fact. The ownership decided, hey, you know what, this is a lot to take care of. The city is set up to maintain this. The challenge always is, in most cases, those streets aren't inspected by the city, or they're not built to the city standards, whereby it may require a whole overhaul. In most cases I've seen, it doesn't work out and it ends up staying a private street because the city streets are designed for the heavier traffic and, you know, the maintenance that is a bit bearable to maintain.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from Commission members? No. Okay. So if there's no other comments or questions, we'll turn this over to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak? Okay, well, if there's no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to repeal and replace chapter 1107.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll second. We have a motion and a second, so roll call, please.
Mr. Mahousen?
Yes.
Mr. Dowpase?
Yes.
Mr. Volas?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda, This is an ordinance amending chapter 1136, Main Street Districts, specifically section 1136.05, Schedule of Uses, item multi-unit dwelling of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to permit multi-unit dwellings on ground floors when a property does not have frontage on Main Street or another important road in the city as designated by council. Okay, Martin, would you like to give an overview of this item?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think this one's pretty quick and easy. This was an unintended requirement in the Main Street zoning. And, as we mentioned, when the Main Street zoning came in, there will be modifications and fine tuning as the need arises. This would be one of the cases. Essentially what this does is this allows multifamily, as we just read, on the ground floor where that building or parcel doesn't have frontage on there, which makes sense. That, effectively the Main Street zoning, that requires a commercial use on the ground floor, inherently end up with a mixed use. That's the look we're looking for with that Main Street zoning. This simply says when you're back behind that initial row of parcels that do front Main Street, there is no harm in having the multifamily, and therefore making it a bit more appealing to bring in the multifamily, and also helping attract the families into the city as well as part of that.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
My pleasure.
Any questions from commission members?
How many occurrences are there of this situation currently in the Main Street district? Is there anybody have any information about that? I'm having a hard time thinking what that really looks like.
What that would be is where, let me pull up, can you pull up the zoning map on the auditor's website? Effectively, while Randa's pulling that up, this would be where the Main Street zoning has, 2 or 3 parcels deep. This would be not the row of parcels immediately on Main Street, but the second or third row back.
Got it.
Now they can do multifamily on the ground floor.
Yeah, currently, the way it's written, those parcels on the backside would still have to have commercial on the first floor and multifamily above. Where this would allow just direct multifamily, all floors.
A question for, can someone explain the, another important road in the city as designated by council, the definition of important road? I mean, is that already determined, or is that on a case-by-case basis?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
It says, the frontage does not have frontage on Main Street or another important road in the city as designated by council. So is that on a case-by-case basis, or is it are there already roads identified as, I mean, the whole qualification of important?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be in coordination with the city engineer's office. Effectively, that would encumber, roads like Schneider, with that level of traffic. So it may not be just Main Street.
Sure.
As we know, the Main Street district is, as I mentioned, it comes a few parcels off of Main Street. So it may encumber other parcels such as Apple Grove or Schneider or East Hill or some of those properties along those lines where, no, we really do want that mixed use frontage on those heavily trafficked roads. And that's what that's trying to clarify is it may not be Main Street, but this applies to other roads similar to Main Street.
Yeah, I mean, in the table, it's explicitly defining Main Street north or south, Main Street east or west, Charlotte Street northwest, 7th Street northeast or northwest, and Apple Grove. Oh, sorry. I'm just reading that right off the table, the draft table. So it does state, multi-unit dwellings permitted by right for full site building property, if property does not have frontage on any of the following roadways: Main Street north or south, Maple Street east or west, Charlotte Street northwest, 7th Street northeast, northwest, or Apple Grove Street northeast or northwest. So those ones are explicitly defined, Mr. Mahausen. But it does say at the top of the ordinance, as designated by council.
Okay.
And we could use the screen here we have pulled up, the site for the Charlotte Street School. Obviously, they're building a school there. They wouldn't be building an apartment complex, but let's say they were building an apartment complex. This parcel fronts Charlotte Street, so this one, they would not be permitted to build ground floor apartments. Now, but if we look north of there, we have those 4 parcels on Viking, yeah. And so theoretically, if those parcels were big enough to build a multifamily development, those they could build ground floor multifamily. Again, it's Viking is the traffic is much less dense. We don't have the through traffic, not a significant impact there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Development of team. Housing.
Okay, any other questions from the members? Other questions? Anyone from the public like to speak on this issue? No? Okay, if there's no other comments from the city or commission members, I would entertain a motion. I'll make a motion to recommend an ordinance amending chapter 1136 Main Street District, specifically section 1136.05.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Volas?
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen?
Yes.
Mr. Dapes?
Yes. Okay. And I believe that is the last item on our agenda for the evening. So if there's nothing else that anyone would like to speak about, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
All motion to adjourn?
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.